It's the same hustle, it's the same pain, the same tears on everything. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family, like it's one ghetto. It's the same sunshine, it's the same rain, the same struggle just to maintain. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family, like it's one ghetto.
Welcome back to Discussions with Indigenous Education, the genocide of the dark-skinned Indian. And right before the break, we were talking about the Dawes Act, right, and the Dawes Commission, right? And the commission was established to specifically the rest of the Indians that already hadn't been individualized in the one of the last Indian Appropriations Acts. That
the 5 civilized tribes. I mean, just, you know, and the ones that were in that territory of the 5 civilized tribes.
Oh, okay. And so the Dawes Commission and the Dawes Act specifically was established to individualize them and give them individual allotments of land. Matter of fact, I might be going out of place, but let me ask you a question. What happened with the rest of the land?
Well, that happens a little bit later.
That does happen later. Okay.
A little bit later, but again, remember we did mention that the lands were getting whittled away. You know, so they were, you know, slowly but surely getting whittled away.
Right, and so again, it's 1893, right? The Dawes Commission is specifically negotiating with the tribes, offering them an incentive. The tribes was like, no, man, we did this for y'all already. For the last 300 years, we've been doing this for y'all. And so now we have another act.
Yes.
What's the next act?
And this act really kind of put the nail in the coffin, I think.
Okay.
Because it just did away with a lot of things that the tribes couldn't get back, you know. But this was the Curtis Act of 1898.
Okay.
And the Curtis Act, what it did was it dissolved tribal governments.
So if you were looking at genocide of indigenous populations, particularly here in the United States, this would definitely be one of the acts that you would look for as far as how they systematically and through their organizational tactics dismantled the tribes. So remember that Curtis Act, but go ahead.
Okay, and what the act did, it allowed the Dawes Commission to take control of the tribal membership rolls.
Ooh.
Okay, because now they want to know who all the people are. So they have to come up with these roles so now they can get, because up until now,
they don't know who.
They don't know how many Indians are here and stuff, you know, because previous years they have a count of the United States, you know, they do it every 10 years with the census, you know. 1870 was the first year that the slave population was counted.
Not as a whole person. Another conversation. Continue.
Well, by 1870 they were counted as whole people.
Oh, they were by that time?
Yes.
Oh, that's right. Because
now slavery has been abolished.
We had the slave civil war and everything like that. Okay.
Yeah. But now we have, you know, with the Dawes Commission coming in, and now we have this Curtis Act. That is now.
So now, okay, so wait a second. So we had the Dawes Act, right?
First the Dawes Act.
Then we had the Dawes Commission. And I know that they thought we were going to go to the rolls, but then we had the Curtis Act.
Right.
And the Curtis Act gave permission for the Dawes Commission to make rolls for the tribes.
Yes. And the chiefs had no say.
The chiefs didn't have a say at all.
The chiefs did not have a say, you know, so, and particularly, and I will say this particularly when it was dealing with the freedmen.
Right, because now we have a commission established, right, of white men.
Yes.
that have the legal authority
to say who is
and who isn't. And so they put together the roles, you know, recognizing they had separate roles for two different groups of people, the freedmen, right, versus the Indian, right?
And there in Indian country, they now had to make separate roles, because now they're saying, the commission is saying, that these people are not part of the tribes. You know, that they were slaves.
Right.
So if they were slaves, then you know, then they didn't have any blood relationship, and so we have to make a separate role for them. Not that that was
the case.
Right.
Right. And again, this is where the genocide of the brown-skinned Indian, darker-skinned Indian comes back into this conversation about what's happening west of the Mississippi. And that's how all of this draws back in, because now they can control the idea, the definition, the identities, and point specific groups of people that can be, and then the rest of y'all is something else.
Right, you can't be. And there were many people that were put on the freedmen rolls who had blood relationships.
Some of them were full blood.
Full blood, quarter blood, you know. Look, we don't even consider the blood part, because again, if you're part of a tribe, you're part of a tribe. You know, so blood didn't matter, you know, until the Europeans came in, you know. But now, because of the laws that they created that made it that a dark-skinned person, of course they were slaves, that they were not Indians. And so now you have the Dawes Commission that is sitting there and saying, oh, well, yeah, you're a freedman, so you get put on that role. Again, even though their grandparent was the full-blooded native that is on that role in that tribe.
Yo, listen, the boy Dawes came from Massachusetts. What he know what an Indian from Georgia look like, right?
But then you know what is also very interesting, though, is that Curtis, Charles Curtis, was part Indian. He was part Indian, and so again, it's the mentality at that time. He just felt that by doing this, it was better for his people. You know.
Let's talk about what the Curtis Act, some of the other things that the Curtis Act did, right? Because you said that, you mentioned that it dissolved tribal governments, right? That's a huge thing. Like, that's it. No more government for tribal peoples. No more governments for Indians, period.
Right, and it put all of their tribal courts and everything in United States jurisdiction.
Okay.
Everything.
And again, it also allotted the general lands of the Indians to individuals in that tribe, right? And it also, and it said lands not distributed will be available for settlement.
Yes, for non-Indian population.
And that's important, right? You know, it also did a few other things, right? The act allowed the Dawes Commission to take full control. We've talked about this over the tribal membership rolls, determining who was eligible for land allotments and therefore citizenship. I wanted to read that last part.
Okay.
Because if you weren't available for land allotments, then you couldn't be a citizen. And that was a way to develop the bridge between the darker Indian and the lighter skinned Indian, because the darker skinned Indian are freedmen now, right? And the freedmen they're not native, so they don't qualify to be given that land.
Right, and now one thing though, remember in 1866, they made those tribes initially say that they had to become a part of the tribes, you know. But then later, once they got rid of those treaties,
right. Now they don't want them to be a part of the tribe anymore.
Right.
Well, you know, because now they're, oh man, y'all can have them. They y'all problem. We back, and now, no, okay, we're going to separate y'all again.
And then, and the ones that were freedmen that they allowed to stay a part of the tribes were given a much smaller piece. That was that 40 acres that we always hear about. You know, most of the land allotments for the general population of every Indian was supposed to get 160 acres.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
However, the freedmen only got 40.
Okay. Right. Did they get their 40?
Well, that's another.
Well, you know, let's take a break here. And when we get back, we'll start to wrap up this show. All right? So we'll be right back with more discussions with Indigenous education, the genocide of the dark-skinned Indian.
Greetings. I'm Red Silver Fox, co-founder of Indeed Indigenous Education, and I would like to invite you to visit indedushop.com. That's indedushop.com, and help support our mission to educate the public of the omitted history of the brown and dark-skinned indigenous population of the Americas. And as always, we would like to thank you for your support.
Greetings, and welcome to Indeed's Moments in Indigenous Education, which focuses on historical facts which have been omitted or forgotten. Please join us for today's topic.
The United States in 1899 issued its first and only paper currency displaying a Native American. The $5 note, sometimes called the Indian Chief Note or certificate, was part of a series of notes called the Educational Series. These notes had prominent artists to provide the designs and are considered the most beautifully constructed and artistically designed series of paper money produced by the United States. The man featured on the $5 silver certificate was a Lakota chief by the name of Running Antelope, who was a member of the Hunkpah tribe and a close associate to Sitting Bull. It turns out that the image on the note had a very large problem. The image of Running Antelope on the currency shows him in a full headdress. The problem with this image is that the headdress on Running Antelope was not a headdress from his tribe, but from the rival Pawnee tribe. And to make matters worse, it was the war bonnet of the Pawnee. Also, you can see from Running Antelope's portrait that was used for the currency, his headdress was not as elaborate. One story is that the headdress of Running Antelope was too tall for the engraving. Another story is that Running Antelope was asked to wear the Pawnee headdress, but he refused. And yet another where it is stated that when Running Antelope's image was presented for final approval for the money, the director of the Bureau of Engraving and Printing felt something was wrong because all the images of Indian chiefs he had ever seen were of men wearing a headdress. An artist was eventually commissioned to change the original Hunkpah headdress to the Pawnee headdress on the image. Another tidbit of information to consider is why was Running Antelope's image chosen to be displayed on United States currency? He wasn't even a chief. He was, however, one of his tribe's 4 shirt wearers. These men were held in exceptionally high esteem, where they were expected to help enforce and protect their tribe's most vulnerable members. They also were the intermediary between the tribe council and headmen who carried out tribal policy and decisions. Sitting Bull's uncle was a shirt wearer, and Sitting Bull became a war chief. Running Antelope was considered a brave warrior, an accomplished diplomat, a stirring orator, and a man of high principle and independent thought. He gradually, however, came to believe that the whites could not be expelled, and his people's survival lay in seeking the best accommodations possible with the invading white man. Sitting Bull, who once held running antelope in high esteem because of his effectiveness in intertribal conflicts, eventually changed his attitude toward him. He came to regard running antelope as a fool. Running antelope became one of the U.S. agency Indians who did not fight against the U.S. Army in the Great Sioux War, nor go into exile in Canada with Sitting Bull. He even served as a district farmer. These were the friendly Indians who were more inclined to make the transition from buffalo hunter to small farmer because of the subsidies promised. By the way, a district farmer like Running Antelope earned $120 a month, a lot of money in the late 1800s. And why, after Sitting Bull's murder and the massacre at Wounded Knee, would the United States want to feature a Native American on their money? The sentiment of the United States citizens at the time is summed up very well, quoting this newspaper editor, who later altered The Wizard of Oz.
The pioneer has before declared that our only safety depends upon the total extermination of the Indians. Having wronged them for centuries, we had better, in order to protect our civilization, follow it up with one more wrong and wipe these untamed and untamable creatures from the face of the earth. In this lies safety for our settlers and soldiers who are under incompetent commands. Otherwise, we may expect future years to be as full of trouble with the Redskins as those have been in the past.
Could it possibly be that the image was to represent a people that will soon be exterminated from United States soil, and Running Antelope represented the means of extermination? I guess we will never know that answer.
You have just finished watching Indeed's Moments in Indigenous History. Please join us next time. Peace. You're watching Discussions with Indigenous Education.
Greetings and welcome back to Discussions with Indigenous Education, the genocide of the dark-skinned Indian. We are talking about the Curtis Act, which is placed right in the middle of a very famous name that a lot of natives know, which is the Dawes, right? We had the Dawes Act, we had the Dawes Commission, we had the Curtis Act, and the Curtis Act gave legal authority for the Dawes Commission to establish the Dawes Road. It's a lot, right? And all of this happening in the late 1800s, early 1900s, right? 1889 is when the Curtis Act comes into effect, right? Mm-hmm. And it was, I had mentioned that it gave, well, some of the things the Curtis Act did was it dissolved tribal governments, it mandated allotments to individuals, it allowed the Dawes Commission to establish the Dawes Rolls, and it effectively, one thing we didn't talk about, I want to make sure we talk about before we end it, and that's the educational systems. Because after the Curtis Act, we get this new thing that happens that's still discussed. As a matter of fact, the President of the United States just recently apologized for the Indian boarding schools, right? And so the Curtis Act also did something with respects to Indians in education.
Now, before that, though, there were schools that were established that were just Indian schools. Okay, and again, and it was all about assimilation and assimilating the Indians into the United States.
Well, you want me to read it? What it says? It says that the Curtis Act also affected tribal education and social institutions. Tribal schools, which were under the control of the 5 civilized tribes, were now subject to federal authority.
Yeah,
right?
so up until that time, the tribes were able to have control over the schools. But now, the United States government has the control now.
That's ridiculous, right? And now they're able to control the
Teachings.
the history that these people are going to know about themselves, right? And know about the surrounding areas, know about other Indians, which is really important because we're still dealing with the ramifications of that issue, that a colonizing agent is the ones that have been teaching us about each other, right? And of course, you know, we're going to, yeah, it's a lot, right?
Yeah, but you know, one thing though that I find very interesting over there when we're dealing with these 5 civilized tribes, as opposed to the other tribes, that the 5 civilized tribes, you know, they had to make these special treaties with the United States government. And one thing that I found very interesting was that within the 5 civilized tribes, if you had a family that was from 2 different tribes, so let's say you had, let's say a father was a Cherokee and a mother was a Creek, okay? Because of these treaties and everything that were being created, children from that union had to choose one of these tribes. So they had to choose. So if they chose their mother's tribe, and if their mother was a Creek, so now that means now that they are half Creek. They don't get a chance to include the Cherokee part of them because now they're half Creek, and so that's what goes down on their card.
That they're only half Indian.
Yeah, or that they're half. Yes, and also though that that continued after that. So it even continues today. You know, where if a parent is, you have a parent from one tribe and a parent from another tribe, they can't be a member of both tribes. They have to be a member of one. And then they're only half. And so because of the laws that were created,
and
you know, the blood quantum issues, that eventually that would fade away.
Even though
that didn't happen though with some of the other tribes that were, some of the Plains tribes and some of the other tribes. They could list that they were members of a few different tribes.
Okay. Yeah, but they, you know, again, it's the dominance over this eastern, you know, shoreline, right? And the realities that this native population looked different. And we have to continue to do things to dismantle, to deflect, to rewrite the history of that population so that we're not held liable for the genocide that they conducted against our people. And this is really as simple as that. And so as we wrap up the show, we'll move forward in time just a little bit, and just to state that the Curtis Act eventually led to Indian territory being ceded and turned into what is now Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, yes.
Not even 10 years later. It was in 1907 is when Oklahoma became a state. And so that...
is that when they became a state, or is that when they had to have all of their things resolved?
Well, they were, it says that Oklahoma territory and its admission into the Union as a state was in 1907.
Okay.
So they did everything that they needed to do to become to have full stateship within inside of the United States, right? Which is, again, 1907 is 10 years after the Curtis Act was implemented, and they be jurisdiction over anything. Y'all wards of the state, individualized allotments of your lands to, and the rest of the lands, we're gonna sell to our people. And so, okay, we're wrapping it up. Do you want to say anything before we close this show out?
Well, there's more to come.
There's definitely more to come.
There's more organization that they did.
All right, well, you know what? With that being said, we hope that you continue to check us out. I'd like to thank our co-host, Red Silver Fox, also known as Renee Sanders. I'm your host, Tavis Sanders, also known as Red Tail Hawk, and we hope to see you next time on Discussions with Indigenous Education, the Genocide of the Dark-Skinned Indian. Peace.
All right.
Done deal. Pictures speak 1,000 words. Maps tell you more. And as far as the United States is concerned, the census is everything. And so let's take a look at this map from the 1600s as I wrap it up. The Southeast is what we're talking about here. This was a group of indigenous peoples, and this map they're labeled as Muskogean Indians. Muskogean because of the language stock, but also the description of the Southeast indigenous population was a Negro stock. Let's take it 200 years into the future. This is a map in the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken, 1890. This is a map of the colored people in the United States at the time. Map looks very familiar. Let me just make sure y'all can see the green part we're paying attention to. Now, today, first they were indigenous, now they're peoples of color, and in the 2020 census, these people are called Black. Population never moved, but as far as mainstream historical context is concerned, either these people moved west or they were killed. But if you look on the map, we are still here.
It's the same hustle, it's the same thing, the same tears on everything. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family, like it's one ghetto. It's the same sunshine, it's the same rain, the same struggle just to maintain. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family, like it's one ghetto. Yeah. Somebody found working fingers to the bone. Somebody got a cousin getting that thug feels alone. Somebody fam got weight on the block, AKs on the block, might spray on the block, y'all. Somebody fam still on welfare, oh yeah. Somebody on the grind for daycare, oh yeah. If you got thugging in your family tree, then somebody out there kidding me. Everybody say it's the same hustle, same thing, same tears on everything. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family, like it's one ghetto. It's the same sunshine, it's the same rain, the same struggle just to maintain. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family, like it's one ghetto. Yeah. Somebody fam got a Benz on tens. Somebody push a bucket with a car full of friends. Somebody fam locked up, trying to get blinged up, trying to flip green up, couldn't give the street up, y'all. Somebody fam pray for better days, cause somebody fam died yesterday. Tired of pouring out this Hennessy for somebody out there kidding me. Hey, hey, somebody fam finally made it to the top. Somebody fam reaching back to the block. Somebody fam bring the lock to the block. Spin stacks on the block. We're all that we got, y'all. Somebody fam help the hood come up. Somebody fam show the show love. If somebody feeling harmony, then somebody out there kin to me. Everybody say, yeah, same thing, same tears on every face. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family, like it's one that owns the same sunshine, the same rain, the same struggle just to maintain. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family.